Good evening, everyone. We'll start our class in a few minutes. Okay. Till that time, before we start, can someone just confirm whether I'm audible and my screen is visible? Although I'll be changing my screen, but even then, am I audible enough? Yes, am I audible? Can just write yes in the chat box, even that is fine. Okay, understood. Thank you. Okay, I think we can start now. I'll just start presenting. Right. Yeah. So, welcome to the interactive session of Introduction to History of Architecture in India, and this is week 3. Okay, so I'm Purvita, and this course is coordinated by Professor Pushkar Sohoni. And so, this is basically a doubt clearing and interactive session. We have this interactive session, like we already had two interactive sessions in the past. Two Tuesdays. So it starts from 6 p.m. till like whichever time, it's 6 to 8 basically. And we basically solve some sample questions based on the type of questions you get in your assignment. So in each of the courses that you see, you have two assignments per week. So basically, this session is held so that you can clarify some of the doubts that you have. And if we go back to the recap of this week, before I go back to the recap, there's someone who's waiting. Wait a second. Yeah. So if we look at what happened in the course lecture of week 3, so the first two lectures were on Mughal architecture, first part of Mughal architecture and second part. It was basically first part was still Jahangir's rule, and then after that from Jahangir it started. Lecture 3 was mostly about the imbrication of the Sultanate and the Maratha architecture, how there was this influence of the Islamic features, or the different elements of Islamic architecture on the Maratha architecture, how it you can say transition, although it wanted to the Maratha architecture wanted to build a specific language of its own. And lecture 4 was mostly about the Maratha temple in details, about various Maratha temples. I mean, starting from early 17th, 18th century to late 18th century. Yeah. Okay, and last fifth lecture was mostly about the review of all the four lectures that were discussed. So to start with, let's have our first question. Okay, before we have our first question, it's mostly basically theoretical or verbal questions, and also we have some visual questions. Okay, so this is the first question that we have. So which is one of the salient features of Mughal architecture that was borrowed from the Timurids? Also, if you want to answer the question, you can unmute yourself because I mean, in Google Meet, the only issue is when I have to go back and check the answers, I have to like close the screen, this particular window, and then again go back. So you can just unmute and answer. Okay. Anyways, I have to again go back. Yeah, I think so. You all have already seen the answer. So the accepted answer is Ivans or Iwans. Okay, so even if you remember, I mean, those who had done those who have attended my last lecture, they have, there was also this one first question that we had regarding, the what kind of Mughal architecture or features were basically, borrowed from this particular Timurid dynasty. So obviously the answer was Ivan. And this Ivans or Iwans also, these are, if you look into this particular image, you'll be able to understand that these Ivans are the rectangular hall or space that have this vaulted ceiling. So if you look at this portion, so this is basically a vaulted portion. Okay, so if you see, this is some kind of this portico is projected. Okay, so this Ivans are actually the features that were taken hugely, that were inspired from the buildings that were built in Samarkand. Okay, Samarkand in Uzbekistan. So that was the place where this Timurid dynasty had its, like you can say the headquarters. Okay, and if you look at the later buildings, the Mughal buildings, for example, this building is the northern portico of Imtiaz ud Daula's tomb in Agra. So you can see this use of this rectangular. So this is basically this rectangular space, okay, which is having a vaulted ceiling, and it has three-sided walls and it's open on one end. So this is the opening that you can see. And also this is commonly used in the Islamic architecture, mostly as an entrance or a hall that is facing some kind of a courtyard. Okay, so that's just a second. Oh, okay, let's move to the next question. So the next question is about the Maratha temples. So the late Maratha temples of the 18th century were sometimes, can someone answer this?
Similar to Bhumija అంటే ఎగరి type.
Yes, yes, absolutely correct. So the answer is similar to Bhumija and Shikhari types. Just a second, I'll just, yeah. Okay, let me see who answered this, because most of the time, whenever you answer, can you just unmute or pick your hand? I mean, raise your hand. Are you J. Nalha Kumar?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
No, no. Who answered right now? Aarti. I saw. Yeah, no, it's not Arti. Anyways, but whoever, I think you answered in my last class also. Well done. Okay. So let's go to the explanation of this. Where is the person? Yeah. So if you see, although what I mean, if you remember the class lecture, you remember that the Maratha temple, it had influence of, you can say, if you look into the Maratha temples, particularly the transition. Just a second, there's someone who is, So if you look into the Maratha temple, so Maratha temple had quite a number of influence, particularly because of the location. Okay, where the Maratha, this temples of the Maharashtra basically. So it started with Shivaji as the emperor of this Maratha kingdom, and this Maratha temples, all the Maratha temples that we will see has they are influenced by the Yadavas of the Deccan, okay, and also the Islamic, or very specifically the Sultanate influence. So this is something which you are going to see. However, this mostly goes for the early Maratha temples. Okay, when there was this transition, the lecture where we studied about the imbrication of the sultanates and the and the Maratha architecture. So there we saw that this influence of the Yadavas of the Deccan as well as the Sultanate influence. As we move towards, as we move forward, we'll see that apart from this two Yadavas of the Deccan and the Sultanate influence, suddenly we also find that there's this influence of the northern Indian architecture, particularly the Rajput style as well. And if you look into the temples that were being built in the northern part of India, so it mostly had this Shekhari style. So what is the Shekhari style? So if you look into the spire, so there's this central spire just above the sanctum or the Garbhagriha, and then there are these smaller spires which are coming down that basically covers the projections. But if you look into it, you'll find that it looks some kind of a cascade, or it looks some kind of a mountain. Okay, so there are these levels, this verticality is there in the Shekri style. And if you look into the Bhumija style, you'll find that one of the very finest example of Bhumija style is definitely the Gandeshwar temple. Okay, so you'll find that there's this horizontality, the horizontal levels that we see. Okay, so that's also there. So there's the central spine, there's the Samlaka. Okay, and also there are the smaller spires, very smaller spires, which somewhat highlights the horizontal band of the temple spire, right? And if you look into this late Maratha temple, there also, of course, Omkareshwar temple, it also has some of the elements of this Bhumija and Shikhari style, trying to keep that horizontal bands, you can see. Okay, but at the same time we do see the Islamic influence as well, where instead of temple spires, we see small minarets. Okay, very similar to that of the mosques. Okay, or in fact we will see how it has been compared to Muharram's taziyas. Okay, and also this use of domes instead of the amlakas, which are commonly seen in the temples. Okay, if there's someone who is waiting, I'll just one second. Okay. So I hope you all got this portion. Yes. So we'll move to the next question. So again, a bit of to and fro from in the lecture classes, but yes, the third question you can see here, the common type for a building plan called the
All
Hirsch
of,
Gebischt. Yeah,
all of the above.
all of the above. Okay. Anyone else with any other answer?
B. Option B.
Option B. Okay. Good that I got some, contrasting. Yes, you are. one who answered it at the end. So that's correct. It's not hushed based is not actually a building set in a garden. No, it's not. Neither is it a circular room with radiation arms. So the actual answer will be option B that you see. So that's four sets of rooms in corners connected by large ions and galleries. Okay, so we'll quickly look into this hushed bish or hushed behesht. There are different ways of pronouncing, but anyways, we do understand what we want to understand. So this literally means eight heavens, or in the lecture, if you remember, it was said that it means eight paradise. Okay, so this eight paradise, so this is something, this term is actually a Persian term, which basically refers to a type of floor plan that consists of a central hall. So you can see if you look into this, so this is basically a very typical of the hushed behesht plan, which was first seen at the Humayun's tomb. Okay, I have one photo of Humayun's tomb. I'll definitely show you all. But yes, the first reference or the first time this hushed besh plan was implemented was in this Humayun's tomb. And if you look into this, this is basically an octagonal plan or an octagonal shaped floor plan. Okay, and there are these four rooms at the four corners. So this is basically nothing but a square. Okay, so this is a square, and this square is basically, if you see, it is this, it is cut down. So this kind of plan is basically to make the squinches. Okay, so squinch is basically a type of a way of putting the toe. So what happens if you look at it like this? I mean, three dimensionally. So if this is the room, okay, so this is suppose you consider it to be solid. So you just what they used to do, they used to cut this particular portion and place a tomb on top of it. Okay, so, sorry, place not a tomb, place a dome on top of it. So it would look something like this. Okay, although I'm not that great in drawing and doing things, but yes, this would look something like this. So you have this thing, this portion of the square being cut, and then here what would happen? A dome would be placed because it's the central room. I think you can understand that. Okay, so that's how the floor plan used to be built. So this four portals that you see at the four corners, okay, and this would be built on a this entire hushed besh plan of this four rooms. Sorry, this this room with four again this four this rooms at the corner, they would be placed on top of a platform. So if you look into this example that I have, the image of which I have put, the plan and elevation, this is that of the Taj Mahal. So Taj Mahal, so this central, this particular room that you see, and there are these projections that you actually see, these are nothing but actually you see it in straight line in the elevation, but originally if you look at it from the plan, you'll be able to understand. So this is basically the central chamber, the octagonal shaped central chamber, and then there are these four rooms at the four corners. Okay, so this is basically the hushed behesht plan, and this is recognized by, there are, this is again this style which has been taken is influenced from the Timurid dynasty. Okay, so this is again an example where we see that the Timurid influence was there on the Mughal architecture as well. Okay, yeah. So, okay, next question we have. So, the next fourth question that we have is Hauz e Nilofer, or the pool of lotuses that was built by Babur, was carved out of. So, Hauz e
Ma-
Nilofer is also, yeah. Tell me the answer.
marble. Marble.
Marble.
Yes, marble.
Okay. Anybody else with any other answer? Horse-A Nilofer is also known as Bagh-A Nilofer. Okay, so Bagh, this term you might hear it a lot of times. So Bagh-A Nilofer, Bagh is basically garden. Okay, I did get one answer, but that's not the correct answer. So the correct answer is yellow Dholpur rock. Okay, so it's already there in the lecture. You can just go and hear that portion once again. So it's in a week three's first lecture, lecture number 1, just a bit after it starts. So this Baghe Nilofer or the Horse-A Nilofer or the pond of lotuses near Dholpur. This is basically the what it is still remaining. Okay, Horse-A Nilofer. So just a small recap of how what kind of architecture we see during Babur's time. So Babur basically, he started from the Fargana Valley to the Afghanistan, and what he built for the first time, which was previously at that time an extended part of what we call as India. So now it falls. In Afghanistan was basically a garden which is known as Bagh-A Babur. Okay, Bagh-A Babur. So this was the first Mughal garden that we see, and that was built, in this. I mean, when the Mughal invasion slowly started, and if you just recall a bit, it had, basically, it was built out of a quadripartite plan, which is often referred as the Char Bagh or the Chahar Bagh, okay, later on or now. And also, it had different trees of different shapes and textures and sizes as well, okay. And also, there was this central water channel. So again, this central water channel, the use of this fortified plan, use of different trees of shapes and textures and sizes, these are very much influenced from the Persian style, okay, the Timurid style, or the kind of expressions, architectural expressions that was there during Timurid, in the Timurid Empire, okay, and this slowly continued in India as well. Okay, so that was about Babur. Okay, and later on he also built the Horse-A Nilofer or the Pool of Lotuses. Okay, is it okay, everybody? Let's have our next question, the fifth question. That is architecturally pick the odd one out. And also, if anyone can answer this, do let me know that why do you think this is the odd one out?
It's Akbar's tomb Sikandara. Rest of them are made in Hastbisht format. They have a dome at the center. And if you see Akbar's tomb, it is made of red sandstone at the lower two stories, and upper stories made up of marble,
Marble,
which is
yes.
also using bangla roof at the top.
Yes, yes, very good. Excellent explanation, and it's great that you understood this entire concept. Okay, because yeah, I'll show the image. So this is Akbar's tomb at Sikandra. Also, if you look at the Akbar's tomb at Sikandra, you see that of course definitely we have the use of this sandstone and the use of marble at the top layers. You can see. Okay, but interestingly, what we see is that there's no monumental dome. In all the other examples, be it Taj Mahal, be it Humayun's tomb, be it Bibi Ka Maqbara that was built by Aurangzeb, all of them had this bulbous onion shaped dome, okay, on top of the tomb. But in this case, we do not see any kind of use of monumental tomb. Also, this is a trabeated structure. Okay, so it's basically trabeated structure means it's lintel and post. Okay, so it's a lintel and post structure, the kind of structure we had seen in our during the Buddhist period, during the Buddhist architecture or the Hindu architecture, initial Hindu architecture. Okay, and not only that, if you look into this particular monument or this structure, you see that there, of course, there are a number of pavilions. So pavilions were something that were, of course, used in a lot of other Mughal buildings as well. But what's interesting is that, do you see the use of this bangla roof over here? There are chhatris that you see at the corners, okay, which are built with the help of this marble. But if you look into this particular structure, so this is basically the very famous bangla roof. Okay, the kind of shape that you get, the this curvilinear shape that you have, this is basically referred to as the Bangla roof. Also, there are use of several other vaulted spaces. Vaulted roofs are also there. Okay, so that is the reason why this Akbar's tomb at Sikandra is the odd one out architecturally. So here, this is the example of the great Humayun's tomb, where here also you see the use of sandstone, red sandstone and marble. Okay, but of course, here we see that very typical of a Mughal architecture, we see this use of a monumental dome, this huge dome, right? Also, in case of Taj Mahal, we see the use of dome. Also, in case of Bibi Ka Maqbara, we see the use of dome. Okay, so yes, absolutely correct. Okay, now let's come to the sixth question. That is, the citadel that is built inside the city of Shahjahanabad is today commonly known as. Yeah, what happened? Very easy.
It is
Red Fort.
Yes, it's Red Fort. Okay, so Chand Minar is definitely not the answer. Delhi Fort, there's nothing like Delhi Fort, and of course, it's not Purana Kila as well. So Purana Kila is basically one structure or one fort, you can say, and to the north of there's someone who's again. Just a second. Yeah. So if you look at if we just go back to this Shahjahanabad, so Shahjahanabad was built by Shah Jahan, and he had basically built this Red Fort at Delhi, which was in Shahjahanabad, the citadel inside the city of Shahjahanabad, and Shahjahanabad was built uh, to the north of Purana Kila. So Purana Killa is basically the fort, and towards its north, it's the Shahjahanabad. Okay, so the correct answer is Red Fort. So this is the image of Red Fort, and you have seen that in the lecture how it has been mentioned that Red Fort became one of the most important landmark because it was here where the independence of our country was declared. And not only that, if you just we will see some of the pictures, but if you look at if you just remember the kind of buildings that were there inside the Red Fort. So Red Fort itself is it acts like that of a city itself, because you enter the Red Fort, first you have to cross a bazaar, and then you enter the fort walls. So there are several walls, and these fort walls are still there in Delhi. And there are this Ajmer wall, and all. There are these different names. Those who are from Delhi, they will know it well. And these walls, this gates, sorry, it's not walls. Walls are of course there, but it's actually the gates. So Ajmer Gate actually. So Ajmer Gate and so on. So it's there. And then once you enter the gates from different directions, you basically enter the main space of inside the fort, where you'll find several smaller buildings. For example, there's Diwani Am, there's Diwani Khas. Okay, and also there are mosques as well. Okay, so that entire, there are smaller other monuments or buildings inside this fort as well. Okay, so yes, let's move to the next one. The fort. garden plan followed from Bagh-e-Babur to many monuments is termed. So this is something I don't think. Yes, what happened?
Chahar Bagh, the first one.
This is the easiest, I think.
Yeah.
So yes, the answer is Charbagh. So Charbagh is basically, I've already, to some extent, I have already explained. I mean, even in the lecture class also, you'll see that Charbagh is basically this Persian style garden, and Chahar, whichever way you pronounce it, it basically refers to the number four, right? And this, why this four? Because there's this huge enclosed space, and it is divided into four quadrants. So from there we get the name Chahar Bagh or the Char Bagh. And then further, each of the quadrant can be further subdivided into four more quadrants. And again, it can be, I mean, if the design is something like that, it again gives, you know, I mean, it can be again subdivided into four more quadrants, and it can just go on. So if we look into some of the very specific features of Charbagh, definitely you will find a central water channel. Okay, so in all the charbags that you see, so there will be a central water channel, and there's this geometric precision. Of course, this four and then again bisected by further four quadrants, and then again further four quadrants. You get this geometric precision. The design is something like that. It also represents something, the four gardens and the four rivers of the paradise that are explained in Quran. Okay. Also, you might find the use of fountains and few other water features. And also, most of the time, there are these white tars, or you can say there are. I mean, this char bagh is often at the center. You might find a white pavilion as well, or you might find a tomb placed just at the center of this char bagh. Okay, so there can be any kind of architectural feature in this char bagh. So one of the very finest example of Charbagh, of course, Babur is one of the oldest example, or rather one of the first example of this Charbagh garden. But apart from that, there were several gardens that were built by Jahangir. Okay, so Jahangir, again, Shalimar Garden is one such famous example. Apart from that, Jahangir had built few other gardens as well. For example, the wooden pavilions at Baghe Babar, that was also built by Jahangir. Apart from that, there was this tomb at Khusrau Bagh. So Khusrau Bagh is again, that was another garden, and within which this just a second, yeah, within which again the garden was built by Jahangir. So there are numerous examples of this Mughal garden that you can definitely go through and see. Apart from that, not just Jahangir, there were other gardens. There are other gardens. For example, the Nishad Bagh. That's also one of the very finest example of a Mughal garden which is there in India. So you can definitely look into this kind of examples when it comes to the Mughal garden. Okay, so I hope you can see in this particular image that is there in your left hand side, where you see there's this central pavilion, and then the entire garden. Of course, the entire garden is first bisected into four, not bisected, rather divided into four quadrants, and then further this there's this play of this geometry in terms of several other quadrants are also there. Okay. Okay, next one, the eighth question that we have, the study of Sultanate Mughal Maratha Rajput architecture as a single complex demonstrates.
All of the above, ma'am.
Oh yes, this is a very favorite answer of most of us, all of the above. So, if you look into the explanation, or if you look into the options that we have for this question, architecture as an expression of political power. So, definitely, we have seen in our previous lecture also, where we studied about the Anwa temple. Okay, so there also you saw that how Singhala basically he ruled in Gujarat, and he came back. Okay, And he basically, what did he do? He saw something in Gujarat, the kind of use of Bhumija style architecture, and that was replicated in when he came back to his own kingdom. So there also you see that it's an expression of the political power. Not only that, in case of Mughal, okay, in case of later on you see Marathas, the Rajputs, everywhere this architecture was basically to show that yes, I have my power, I can build something big. And that was the major reason why these huge monuments or why these huge structures were built in the first place. So it's to show that you dominate in that region, that's where you are. Okay, not only that, it's also the movement of ideas and people across region, because the kind of influence, the kind of sultanate or the Mughal architecture that you see in India, it's actually a blend of the architecture that was brought from Persia, from there, as well as it was a mix with the indigenous or the original Indian architecture as well. Because the kind of use of chhatris that you see, the use of pavilions that you see, the use of bangla roof that you see. Okay, so all these are elements from India itself. But if you look into the structure, the use of iwans, the use of arches, the use of multifoiled arches, the use of cast arches, all these arches are something which was brought. So it's something like the movement of idea happened from the central part of Asia to India, right? So it's because people have moved, it's because there were these invasions, the ideas have moved. Okay, and also we do see a uniformity of architectural ideas across India. So you see that in whichever part you go, you will find some kind of similarities in terms of the architectural features. For example, if you look into, again going back to the use of chhatris, the huge use of chhatris in the western part and the Deccan part of our country. So that is basically this uniformity of architectural ideas. Not only that, the use, for example, the type of temple spires that we see, the use of shikhari style, this structures, the shikhari style temple spire. So this is something you will find. This is widely found in the northern part of our country. If you look into the Dilwara temples, if you look at the Kandaria Mahadeva temples, okay. But also you will find that if you move towards the southern part, for example, the Deccan part, so there also you will see this influence of the Shikhari style. Of course, there's Bhumija style as well. So this uniformity of architectural ideas across the country you're going to find. So this, as you see from the question itself, so this answer will be all of the above, and why it's all of the above that we have already tried to understand. Okay. Next one, question number 9. Mughal architectural elements include. This is also a very simple question. I hope you all know this. So the answer will be all of the above. But before that, let me just, yeah. So we have already seen quite a number of Mughal architecture, Mughal building. So yes, Bangla roofs. You have seen it at the tomb of Akbar's tomb at Sikandra. Baluster columns, multifoil arches. So basically, if you look, here you'll find, although it's not a very close up, but if you just ask me that what are these Bangla roofs, I've already explained. Multifoil arches is basically something which is like this, the cast arches or the multifoil arches. Okay, so it's more than, this is something, this kind of arches you have already seen in a number of buildings. And if you talk about this baluster columns, I do have some images at the end of our presentation. There I'll show you. But baluster columns are something like, you'll find this kind of, members. Although it doesn't looks very well, and I just try to. So baluster is basically the railing that we have. Okay, so there's this, this So a series of some kind of this kind of columns being placed, which acts as railings. So that's those are basically referred to as the baluster columns. So this is something, this baluster columns that you see. So this baluster columns are mostly, they are made out of this POP, plaster of Paris or something like that, or maybe they can be carved out of marbles as well. So that's and these are mostly found in the stairways, or these are mostly found in the verandas. Okay, so they are put and it's some kind of a reputation. Okay, so they are put at the parapets, so the roof parapets. So those are, they are put, and they are basically very common kind of an architectural element in the Mughal style. Okay. So here I can't really show you, but yes, do you see this particular portion? So this is basically the kind of, I mean, if I had a zoomed image, I think it would have been better. But the kind of, the kind of elements that are used over here to act as a, I mean, the railings, we call it very commonly as railings, but they are actually balustrades. Okay. So these are the kind of columns that are used at the balustrades. They are known as balustrade columns. Okay. Okay, so with that, we move to our 10th question, that is, early Maratha architecture was similar to.
Yadava architecture, ma'am.
Okay, so yes, Yadava architecture, it did have similarity or influence, but mostly if you look into the style, so the answer will be Sultanate architecture. Sultanate architecture, okay, I do not have an image over here, but I had already shown. Okay, I'll come back to this because I have image of one of the early Maratha temple. So here, let's just move to the next question, and I'll combine the explanation over here. So question number 11: Maratha temples are often characterized by, if you look into the options, you'll be easily able to answer it.
Amlaka on temple spire.
No, 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 no. Actually, Maratha temples didn't have Amlaka on temple spires. Okay.
So the detail, that is what I understood. Okay, fine.
Option B, ma'am.
Option B or D?
B.
This one? Yes, it's correct. So it's basically the vaulted systems with squinches and pendant tips. So if you look into the Maratha temple, so this vaulted systems with squinches and pendant tips, this is very, very typical of a Sultanate architecture. Okay. Yes. So if you look into this particular example, the Kashi Vishweshwar temple in Satara. Apart from that, there were a number of other examples. For example, the Khandoba temple at Pali in Satara itself, or even if you look at the Bhuleshwar temple it was something in somewhere in Satara, near Satara only in Maharashtra. So all these temples, if you look into the kind of these are all examples of early Maratha temple, early Maratha temple. Okay, so these were characterized by vaulted systems. Okay, having domes and squinches. So this the explanation of the part which I am right now explaining, you'll find it in the fourth lecture just at the beginning. Okay, you just go through that portion once again, and you'll be able to just revise that this particular portion. And not only that, with domes, squinches, as well as pendentives. So this use of pendentives was first actually used in the during the Byzantine architecture. So again, that's I mean, not a part of our course, and we are not going to go into deep regarding the Byzantine architecture and its influence. But yes, the pendentives were hugely used there, and that was also a Muslim or an Islamic, empire. So yes, also the use of minarets, the use of chhatris or kiosks. Okay, so these are some of the very common kind of elements that you will find in the early Maratha temple. Also, if you look into this particular dome, so the dome do not have amlaka. Instead, so I think this is a better view of the dome that you see over here. So this dome do not have any kind of amlaka. Rather, it's just a dome. Okay, it's just a sultanate dome that you see. Some kind of some kind of ribs are there in the dome, but yes, that's it. You do not find an amlaka and then a kalasha, which we typically find in the North Indian temples, or also the use of amlaka in the in the vimanas of the kutina style architecture. Okay, next one, the 12th question that we have, the Omkareshwar temple in Pune is an example of.
Maratha temple.
Yes, that's correct. So the Omkareshwar temple in Pune is an example of Maratha temple. Before I move into the explanation of the Maratha temples, let me just jot down some of the Maratha temples that were discussed, so that you can put it at one place and you can just revise it and see the examples or the names of all the Maratha temples that has been discussed in the course. Okay, so it starts with the Khandoba temple at Jejuri. Khandoba temple, Jejuri. Okay, then there's Vithalwadi temple, which is in Pune. Then there's Bhuleshwar temple. Okay. Then there's Khandoba, again another Khandoba temple at Pali in Satara. Okay. There's Kashi, sorry, Kashi Vishweshwar temple again at Satara. So then there's Tulsi Bagh temple in Pune. Okay, there's Hathighat temple. So if you recall Hathighat temple, so Hathighat temple is basically this was built near it's like a huge temple complex. Okay, and there's this ghats, and the temples are built, and temples are basically set on these ghats. Okay, and there are these small elements, the adequils that we have already discussed in our previous lecture, and also this 12-sided dome, and the temple itself had a dome and a square base of shikhara, and which was again surmounted by the circular shikhara. Okay, so if you just go back to the very basic architecture of the Maratha temples, you will find that the Garbhagriha is as simple as a plain cube. It's like a very simple cube. Okay, a square base. Okay, and on top of it there's this circular shikhara. So the shikhara is something which is very much similar to that of the kind of shikharas that you see in the Hindu temples, and on top of this shikhara there's this use of this dome. So this is the very typical, Maratha temple that the style, if you see, it's something like that. So yes, there's Hathighat at Limb, which is again in Satara. There's Omkareshwar temple, which is in Pune. There's Lakshmi Narayan temple, which is at Kiroli Vathar. Okay, again in Satara, Kiroli Vathar. And yeah, these not and so these are some of the examples. Mostly if you see this portion, these are the late 18th centuries, 18th to late 18th century. And this portion, if you see, these are the examples of early Maratha temples. Okay. Yeah, coming to the explanation of this particular temple. So this Omkareshwar temple, as you can see over here. So this Omkareshwar temple, if you see, this is definitely having a very mosque plan. And the image, if you look at, so this portion that you see, this is basically the upper part. Okay, so this is basically uh, the portion above the Garbhagriha, the spire, the temple spire that we have. But if you look at the base, so this is the base. I didn't. I mean, this is one of the image which was showing it very clearly, so I had taken this image. But if you look at the base, the area where the Sabha Mandapa and the Garbhagriha is there. So this is the place of Sabha Mandapa. I hope by now you know what is a Sabha Mandapa and the Garbhagriha. So you can well understand that this is a very simple cubicle, plan. A very simple cubicle room or a space, and on top of that, the other elements are basically kept. So this is this Omkareshwar temple, which is an example of the later Maratha temple. So this is basically having very blank Austrian walls, okay, with some openings. So the openings that you see, these are actually the examples of multifoil arches. So it's something, it looks like this. Okay, the arches look like this over here, this portion. Okay, and also there are a series of vaulted spaces. Okay, and the central one that you see, that is basically the central space, is basically having the spire. And if you look into the spire, you see that how this is basically a dome. You got it? And this particular temple form is very similar to that of Muharram's Tazia. So Tazias are those temporary structures which are taken out during Muharram. And if you look at the structure, if you look at the form of the temple, and if you compare it with the Tazia, you do find the similarity. So although this is a Hindu temple, but it has huge influence of the Sultanate or the Muslim period, mostly because the Sultanates or the Sultans were there for almost 300 years in the Deccan region. Okay, and it's very obvious that the masons or the artisans who were there, they knew this style of architecture. And even if they were building the if they were building the Hindu temples, what you find, you actually find that it's there's this representation of the Islamic features. Is it okay? Is it clear, everybody? Okay, so we are moving to the last segment of today's class, that is to identify some of the buildings. Okay, so let's see if you can identify this particular building or not. Okay, someone might say that I could have kept this particular question in my previous lecture, but I didn't keep it, and I have kept it over here very intentionally. And I'll just explain why I have kept it over here. Can someone recognize this? Anybody who has visited it or have seen it in?
It is Tomb of Hoshan Shah.
Yes, absolutely correct. And it's can you tell me where it's located?
It's in Madhya Pradesh.
Yes.
Exactly, I don't know
It's
the
in
city, but
Mandu.
yeah.
So yes, in my previous class, I did show you all a picture from Mandu only. It was Jahaj Mahal, if you'll remember. So Jahaj Mahal, the reason why I kept it, because Professor Shohoni had he did, I mean, it was not much in details, but he did mention about the Jaunpur Sultanate as well as the Sultanate of Mandu, okay, of the Malwa region. So that basically it's an example. The Jahaj Mahal was an example of the of a building during the sultanates in the Mandu, and so it's from that particular place only Mandu, Hoshang Shah's tomb, and it's a big complex, the mosque complex that we see. So it's a huge one. Of course, can't compare it with that of Taj Mahal, but yes, definitely at that particular location and the kind of grandeur it has, you definitely feel it, and it's also cladded with marble. So the building material is not marble; it's actually again similar to that of Taj Mahal only. It's a brick building, but it's cladded with marble. And this particular building was somewhat compared in professor's lecture with that of another building that was built by. So if you can recall, I'll just then come back.
This is Salim Chisti's tomb at Fatehpur Sikri.
Yes, so this is Salim Chisti's tomb at Fatehpur Sikri. So if you remember that there was this, some kind of a, similarity drawn between Fatehpur Sikri's Salim Chisti's tomb, which is again a marble-cladded building, and it's a beautiful building, very small building, which is dedicated to to Salim Chisti, one of the he was. In Muslims, I think he's one of the fakirs. Okay, so it has been, and this particular building is found in the central portion of the Jami Masjid in Fatehpur Sikri. Okay, and this is built entirely out of again, it's cladded in marble, and this similarity was the similarity between these two buildings was brought by professor himself, and so yes, this is Salim Chisti's tomb at Fatehpur Sikri. Also, with that, since we are talking about Fatehpur Sikri, so Fatehpur Sikri was built by, can someone just quickly tell me who built it?
It was built by
Akbar.
Akbar.
Yes, both of you are correct. Although I can't see your name right now because I have this particular screen in front of me, but yes, both of you are correct. So Fatehpur Sikri is basically, it was built as a, you can say it was some kind of a small, not small actually. If you have again visited it, you will know it that it was an entire township. Like it's one of the good example of urban planning, but yes, one of the major drawback of that particular region was the lack of water, the lack of natural sources of water, and that was the reason why Akbar couldn't continue staying over there. But if you look into the entire complex of Fatehpur Sikri, you will find that there are a number of buildings which has been named later on. For example, we have the Diwani Am, Diwani Khas, there's Panch Mahal, there's Mariam's Palace, there's Jodhabai's Palace. Also, there's this grand Jami Masjid, and with inside it, there's this Salim Chisti's tomb, and also the great Buland Darwaza, the Victory Gate, is also built over there. Okay, so it's also constructed there. So if you look into, I have few images from there, but before that, just tell me which is this particular building.
Fort of Ajmer, built by Akbar.
Yes, yes, it's the it's not. Did you say tomb? But it's. I mean, you are mostly correct. So it's Akbar's palace. Okay, it's not tomb, but it's the palace of Akbar, which is built in Ajmer, and it's currently used as a city museum, right? So if you look into the architectural feature of this particular building, do you see the use of chhatris? You see the use of this chhatris or the kiosks that are there at the corners. Okay, also this particular building is built on the principles of harsh, behesht or bisht, you know Hirsch-based plan. Okay, so a square plan with further uh, rooms at its four corner. Also, it has there are few structures which are trabeated. Okay, and for that reason, this building also do not have any kind of dome. Trabeate, since it's a trabeated structure, and also you find that the elements which are there, for example the chhatris, for example the brackets, not just the chhatris, the brackets, do you see? So these are basically the brackets. Do you see the jharokhas over here? The very fine intricate jali works or the jharokhas. Okay, so all of these are elements from Rajasthan and Gujarat. So why these jharokhas were built? So jharokhas were meant to ensure that there are some openings so that light can come inside. Okay, and at the same time, the kind of weather, the kind of climate this particular region had, that is the that is the western part of our country, Gujarat, Rajasthan, hot and dry climate. So in order to ensure that there's ventilation as well as some kind of light coming in, so these jharokhas were built. And also later on these jharokhas were built so that the women can be you can say protected, or they can be segregated. I mean, their vision can be restricted to the rest of the men in the palace. Okay, so there are a number of usages of this jharokhas, but yes, this jharokha is very typical. Jharokhas, chhatris, the brackets, these are all very typical of the Rajasthani and the Gujarati style of architecture. So this is also something that we see in Akbar's palace in Ajmer, which is currently in Rajasthan. Okay. Yes, this particular building, can you all recognize?
It is Agra Fort.
So yeah, this is Agra Fort. Again, one of the building which is or a fort, if not building, but rather an entire fort. You can fort it is. So this was also built by Akbar. Okay. So this particular image, this is of course from the image you can understand that this is some kind of a masjid. I have already shown you a lot of images of the masjids in my last lecture as well, and again adding another masjid.
This is a masjid from Lahore, which is called as
Lahore Masjid I do have, but this is actually Jami Masjid in Fatehpur Sikri. Okay, so the Salim Chishti's tomb that you saw, the image that I have just seen, shown you on. So that particular that Salim Chishti's tomb is actually located in the courtyard of this Jami Masjid in Fatehpur Sikri. So Fatehpur Sikri is basically, I mean, this is the this particular this particular masjid or the mosque is very similar to the elements that you typically have in any other any other mosque that you will see. For example, the use of this the this areas that you see, the arcaded areas. Okay, the shahans. Okay, the use of this domes, the use of an entranceway, also the mihrab. Okay, the place, the wall. I mean, there's this minbar. Minbar is the place where the Muslim priest or the Muslim, however you call them, so they basically go and say their sermons over there. Also, the Qibla wall is located towards the west. So, so anybody who prays faces the Qibla wall towards the west and prays over there. Okay. So all these elements, the typical elements that are found in any mosque, is present in this Jami Masjid in Fatehpur Sikri. Also, if you look at the material that is used, it's again red sandstone along with some marble claddings. Okay, yeah, this is this. Most of us know. What happened?
Buland Darwaza, Fatehpur
Yes.
Sikri.
So this is the Buland Darwaza, the great entranceway, the victory gate that was built by Akbar. And again, if you look into the influence, the architectural influence, this was heavily influenced from the Timurid dynasty of the use of Iwans, the portico that we just discussed about. Also, this particular building, the Buland Darwaza, was actually you can say a kind of inspiration to the great Jami Masjid that was built in Delhi. Okay, and also this is built using the red sandstone and also marble. So this is the Buland Darwaza. Okay, this one. Can someone recall or did I mean if anyone has ever visited Fatehpur Sikri?
That is.
It's the Panch Mahal in Fatehpur Sikri. Okay, so the buildings that you see, I sorry, the levels that you see. Although this is not the front portion of the Panch Mahal, but yes, there are different levels that you can find in Panch Mahal. So this is basically one of the inner part of Fatehpur Sikri. So where there are several buildings like the Panch Mahal, the Diwani Arm, okay, the Mariam's Palace or the Jodhabai's Palace, all these are located. So these structures have been, as said in the course lecture, that this has been renamed later on, or it has been named later on. But yes, these are some of the buildings inside Fatehpur Sikri. Okay, this one.
Palace at Orcha.
Yes, this is palace at Orcha. So this palace at Orcha is said to be built by one of the vessel of Jahangir and not Jahangir himself, because Jahangir had visited Orcha and stayed there for a night. But however, as you see, I mean, what's more important for us is to understand the architectural expression of this particular Orcha palace. So again, if you look at Orcha Palace, it was actually I mean it has a very good mix of the kind of you can say the use of chhatris, again the chhatris, the kiosks, which are very typical to that of the Hindu architecture. So those are there, and again what you see is the use of extensive use of this domes, which is again very typical of the Muslim architecture or the Mughal architecture. Also, you find that this particular Orcha Palace, this is a very good example where there's a mix of this, both Hindu as well as the Muslim architecture. Okay, so this is again a huge palace which is built in sandstone, not the red one, the yellow sandstone in Orcha. Okay, this particular building. This is actually a part of a building, you can see. I have just, you know, this is again a very well known structure within a bigger fort. So maybe you can answer it.
So the empire used to meet the citizens. That
Yeah,
is the
it's
place.
Diwani Arm. So the place where the emperor used to hold the meetings with his very own people. I mean, with his very own members of the what do you say? I mean, we say court.
Court.
Yeah. So that used to be the Diwani Khas. Okay, so it's for the Khas people, the very noble men actually. So that used to be Diwani Khas, and this is what you see is basically Diwani Arm, but this is where this is in Red Fort. Okay, so this again, Red Fort was built by Shah Jahan, and this is the Diwani Arm that you see. And in Diwani Arm, if you all remember, a very typical decoration has been used, that is known as, can someone just name it?
The trefoil arch and the baluster columns.
Yeah, yeah. Trifoil arches are there. Baluster columns, I exactly do not see here, but yeah, there can be some. I mean, baluster columns are not exactly. Sorry, but
I
what's
don't know the exact name, but
yeah,
this is the system where they have used two columns at one time.
yeah, that's there. But these are all structural members only. Apart from that, the decoration, if you see, so there's this use of this pietra dura. Remember the very analogy that has been brought to that of Pietra Dura was the decorations in the Chini Khana. Okay, the kind of intricate detailing with the mirrors and the use of glass. So here we see that in most of the Mughal structures, particularly built by Shah Jahan, they have this this decorations which is called the Pietra Dura. So Pietra Dura is extensively used in the Diwani arm of Red Fort as well. Okay. Oh, this building,
Moti Mahal.
yes. So Moti Mahal is again uh this is the royal mosque that is again placed inside Red Fort itself. Okay. So yes, this is Moti Mahal in Red Fort. So this was the masjid, or this was the mosque where the emperor himself used to come and offer his prayers. So Shah Jahan used to come and offer his prayers in this masjid. Okay, so which is I mean, can you all identify this one? So this particular structure, the name of which someone had already given it earlier, but I said that no, it's not.
Lahore Fort.
Yes. So this is Lahore Fort. This was also built by Shah Jahan, and later on, there's this masjid. There's this another mosque inside this. Not just mosque. There's this gateway. So the ceremonial gateway was actually extended by his son Aurangzeb. Okay. So Lahore Fort was again. This was where is my cursor? Yeah, built by Shah Jahan, and the ceremonial entrance to this fort was built by Aurangzeb. Okay, this one,
This is Soneri
This
Mahal,
is
Aurangabad.
yes, absolutely correct. So this is the Soneri Mahal. So if you all just recall the kind of buildings that were built by Aurangzeb, mostly you see that in the lecture class also it has been discussed repeatedly that Aurangzeb actually didn't get the time or the kind of activities he was involved with didn't allow him to build a lot of beautiful buildings that were actually built by his predecessor, particularly by Shah Jahan. Okay, so what he was mostly engaged was to expand the influence of his religion. So with for that purpose, what he did, he mostly built a lot of mosques. Okay, he expanded a lot of mosques. Okay, he initiated. I mean, he did that, and apart from that, what he did was to build. He also expanded the Jami Masjid in Aurangabad. He expanded the Qutub Shahi Mosque. Okay, or the Mecca Mosque in Hyderabad or Golconda. He also expanded the mosque in Bijapur. He also added the Badshahi Mosque at Lahore. He did this, the previous one we have already discussed. He had added the ceremonial entranceway to the Lahore fort. And also, apart from that, what he did was he built this Soneri Mahal. Also, he built the Kilai Ark, which is in Aurangabad itself, And later on, you do remember that it was in Ahmednagar military camp where he had built the mosque, and where he basically, the funeral platform was actually kept for Aurangabad, and later on he was cremated elsewhere. So this is again this Soneri Mosque uh, was built by Aurangabad, where you do see the kind of symmetry that is there, and also at the background you see this particular natural this tila, or the kind of a hill that you see over here, which creates a background for this white building. And in this building, you do see, if you look into this particular entrance ways, you find the use of multifoil arches. There are this use of balustrade columns, okay, in a few parts. And also you see in this particular Soneri Mahal, there's this Alamgir Mosque as well. Okay, and at the center you do see the water, okay, water channel. So yes, that's correct. So I hope you all just listed down the kind of expansions, or the kind of architectural things that Aurangzeb was involved with. Okay, so the next one, a very small portion of the Rajput architecture was explained in the the second lecture of third week. So you'll find it towards the very end of the second lecture, that is Mughal architecture part 2, where Professor Sohoni explains some of the very typical Rajput, some of the very famous Rajput buildings. The reason why he was basically talking about these Rajput buildings, if you remember, that Akbar had a very cordial relationship with that of Rajput, mostly because of his tie, his marital, because of the marital relation he had with Rajput princes, and later on the kind of the other the exchanges that was there with the Rajput. And for that purpose, what happened, the Rajputs used to hold a very special place in the court of the Mughals, right? And if you look into it, so the Mughal architectural expressions started to take this Mughal expressions as well. So that was basically how the Rajput architecture also had this Mughal elements you know uh, embossed in their architectural features. So so that was where this Rajput architecture was discussed briefly in the second lecture of third week. And so this particular image that you see, this is a very very famous place in, can someone tell where it is? I'm expecting an answer.
Amir Fort.
Absolutely. I think it's, is it Amber or it's Amir? I found some places using the this particular B, and somewhere it's not using B. So yes, maybe it's Amir only. Okay, but anyways, it's the Amir Fort here, or the Amir Fort in Jaipur. So this fort is located just outside the old city of Jaipur. Okay, now, if you look into the map, you might find that it is very near to the city limits. Okay, this particular place, I mean this particular fort that you see, so it does have this use of this various vaulted spaces, as well as the use of this bangla roofs in a number of kiosks that you see. Also, there are this usage of the multifoil arches, the baluster columns. Also, there are there are several fountains that are used inside the fort, and the quadripartite planning that was introduced by the Mughal, that is also seen in this particular fort, and it's some kind of a mix of both the Hindu as well as the Mughal architecture. So yes, this is the Amer Fort. Okay, absolutely correct. Next one. This is again a very, I mean, most of us know this.
Hawa Mahal.
Hawa Mahal.
Yeah. So this is Hawa Mahal, which is right at the heart of the city, and it's also known as the Palace of Winds. Okay, and of course you do see the kind of architectural mix, the use of jharokas, the use of this small arches. There's this this kiosks. These are actually the baluster columns. For a long time, I was just trying to find out which particular image has this proper baluster columns. So I hope you can understand. So this is a particular design of the baluster columns, and I did a very horrible design. I mean, I was freehand drawing. I mean, it's very poor, but I hope you can see that what this baluster columns are basically. So these are basically the baluster columns. I think this is a very good image to represent the baluster. I mean, which is showing the baluster columns. Okay, and apart from that, if you see that this there's this influence of the Bangla roof as well as the this domes. So it's some kind of a mix you can see, and yes, all kinds of Mughal as well as Hindu elements are quite visible in this particular um, Palace of Winds or the Hawa Mahal in Jaipur. Okay. And last, we are almost towards the end of our class. We have a few Maratha temples, examples of the Maratha temples. And so, yes. Can you recall this? This is the Mallikarjun temple.
Mallikarjun
Yes, yes.
Mallikarjun temple at Loni Bhapkar.
Yes, this is the Mallikarjun temple at Loni Bhakkar. Okay, so here, if you look into it, there's this corbelled dome. So this dome that you see, this is basically a corbelled dome. I think we had a very good explanation of the corbelled dome in our previous lecture in the interactive class. There you can see, and of course you can go back to the actual courses, I mean the lectures, and there also, particularly if you go back and look at the Anwa temple, which was there in our in the second week. Okay, so there you'll understand how this corbelled arches were actually built. So this is that particular kind of example of the corbelled, and this is a very very early kind of a temple, Hindu temple, where you find that there's this indication of the Mughals with the Marathas. And also very interestingly, this particular temple, the bottom portion, so this portion is made of stone, but the upper portion is made of, so the shikhara that you see, this is actually made of brick. Okay, so it is not entirely made out of stone. Okay, so this is the Mallikarjun temple at Loni Bhakkar. Very good. This one, although it's a bit pixelated, the image is a bit pixelated one, but yes, you can just.
Kandaria Mahadev Temple,
No, 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 no.
Kazan.
This is not Kandaria Mahadeva. Why? Because Kandaria Mahadeva, if you look at the image of Kandaria Mahadeva, of course you might find that this portion, like it's like coming down. It's like some kind of cascade. But do you look into this particular wall? Kandaria Mahadeva is
Yes.
entirely intricately designed, and it has a number of projections. Okay, but if you look into this particular image, the sanctum, the Garbhagriha, it is having a very very cubical kind of a it's a very plain Austrian wall, and on top of it we have the circular temple spire. Okay, this is a very very typical of the Maratha temples, particularly the early Maratha temples. So definitely it's going to be a Maratha temple. Just what's the name?
Mankeshwar temple at Jodhke.
Very good. Mankeshwar temple at Jorge. Okay. So yes, Mankeshwar temple, Jorge is basically at Nashik. Okay, and this particular building was, this particular temple was built in the 12th century era, 12th CE. Okay, and of course here also you'll find the influence of the sultanates. mostly because of its regional placement. But yeah, uh, also the Bhumija style of the temple, that is also found over here. Okay. This one,
Jagadishwar Temple at Raigad.
yes. So this is the Jagdishwar temple at the Raigarh fort, and this was built by,
Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
yes, this was built by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, and this does looks like this looks like a mosque. Okay, so if you look at the corners, so the corners are marked by the finials. Okay, and we have this small. You can see this dome. The reason is, if you again go back to your lecture class, you will find that the Maratha temples, they under the under Chhatrapati Shivaji, uh, this Maratha temples, I mean, they wanted to bring a kind of a identity which is not influenced by any other style. But we also cannot forget the artisans or the common, I mean, the masons who were building this, right? So the influence was definitely there, although they were building Hindu temples. As for example of this one, this is the Jagdishwar temple inside the Raigad fort. But you see that this does have this mosque plan. The plan very similar to that of the mosque. Okay, and also there's a dome on the sanctum, not a temple spire. So yes, this also you see the use of minarets. Okay, so yes, that was it from my side for today's class. I think we had a good recap of all the lectures and that you had for the third week. So yes, any question, anybody?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
So you spoke about the baluster column. So now I am
Yeah.
getting confused. Like in that Divane right, which you showed.
Mm-hmm.
There, they were like two repetitive columns. So what is that called?
So those columns, those are not actually baluster columns. Baluster, I mean, when we talk about those two columns side by side, they are actually the structural members itself. So the columns basically they are used there to transfer the load using that of the arches. Okay, so that's an element. Instead of one column, there are two columns. But when we talk about specifically of the baluster columns, baluster columns are something which are mostly used at the balustrades. Okay, the columns that are placed at the balustrades, the railings, those are the baluster columns, and that is something you'll find, particularly the balconies. So those are something which you'll find extensively being used in most of the Rajput architectural buildings. Okay, and that has been taken. I mean, those style is again something which you'll find in Mughal architecture, because there's a blend or there's this mix of the Hindu and the Muslim architecture. Got it?
Okay. Yeah.
Also,
Thank
you
you.
asked previous week regarding the type of questions that are going to come in the final, exam. So those
Yes.
are
Yes.
mostly very similar to that of the questions that you have in your
Mm.
assignments. Okay, MCQs.
Okay. Yes. Got it, ma'am. Then we'll have to really remember the different pictures and the names.
Yes,
So
yes.
that
So
will be
yeah, so that's the
the
reason I keep
task.
on,
Yes.
noting down that okay, these are the buildings that were already discussed, so that you can just have a note of all the buildings at one place, and you can just go and check the images so that it somewhat gets inside you. So assignments as well as this interactive lecture, I think it's, I mean, it somewhat orients you towards what's going to come in your final, the course exam.
True. True, ma'am. Okay. Got it. Thank
Okay.
you, ma'am.
Okay.
Loving the interactive sessions, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else with any other question? Okay. If you do not have any question, then that's it for today. Okay. Have a good day and thank you, everyone.